Hello, I'm Simon, a broadcaster who began his working life in the travel world, and that's why I'm making these short podcasts to help fellow travellers get around various parts of the world and perhaps discover places that they hadn't before. Today I'm going to take you to Japan, and in a break from the way I like to do it, it wasn't really viable to record on site. So that's why I'm using my notes, and this is about really getting around Japan without being able to speak Japanese and discovering how easy it is if you're an English speaker to get through Japan. So for the Western tourist, there are any numbers of stories of visitors being left, I suppose, high and dry due to so much signage being in Japanese script. Well, let me put you at ease, because getting around Japan, I found, especially on public transport, was relatively easy. Now, I'd say you'd need a little preparation, an understanding of English, and a touch of patience. Japan, and especially Tokyo, is a crowded country, which can be a little overwhelming at first sight, but spend a few days in the country and you'll certainly get used to it. Now, my top tip for anyone planning to get around is to get a JR rail pass in your home country before you travel. I paid extra for a green ticket, that's first class to standard. There wasn't much difference either in the price or the quality of accommodation between the green and I think it's the blue ticket in second class, because it wasn't a lot more. Because Japan was a major destination for me, I was prepared to pay extra. There is a small caveat to this. To travel in green, you must have a reservation, and yet this itself is very straightforward because there are JR Japan Rail ticket desks at all the main stations on the route, be they in Haneda or Hiroshima or wherever. So you can go to these JR ticket desks and book future travel on the main bullet trains, Shinkansens. For domestic journeys or shall we say commuter journeys, where it's just a short hop on a local service, your ticket is valid, you don't need a reservation for that. But for the intercity trains, the Shinkansen, you certainly do. What we found at the JR desk at the main station, almost without exception, there was an English speaking assistant who could help you and guide you as to what train you might want to get from place A to place B. Really, really helpful, really quick, and very, very straightforward. On my blog, which is called Podworld, if you look out the Getting Around Japan section, you'll find I've got a link to the JR Travel Pass. Actually, the longest wait we had was at Narita. This is waiting to get served for a reservation at the ticket desk, waiting about an hour, and that's because every single tourist was at Narita trying to book their intercity travel for their future days ahead. So Narita was worse. I guess I was expecting it to be worse, that everywhere else we queued for the JR English speaking desk. 20 minutes was the most we had to wait. Since I went, prices have gone up a little bit, I would argue slightly above the rate of inflation, so please be mindful of that. If you use the subway in Tokyo or Kyoto, you do need to buy a separate ticket or pass at the machine before you enter. In all cases, and this is genius, thank you Japan for this, they have an English option, and in some of them there were multi-language options when you went to buy your ticket. Certainly that was the case in Tokyo, and I think, if I remember rightly, it was the case in Kyoto too. I've got an English link to that also on the blog. You simply enter your destination, obviously in English, and it will give you a price. The machine will take Japanese notes and coins. I think it's now taking credit cards as well. You can work out your fare by looking at the route maps next to the machine, and it really is straightforward. The graphics are clearly laid out. Now, a few years ago, a friend of mine went to Japan and said the problem you'll find in Japan is that everything is in Japanese script and you won't be able to work your way around. So what you have to do is you have to count the number of stations that you need to go through before you get off. But what I found when I went is that there is now the option for the English language translation, and so you can work out where you're going from and where you're going to. So on the subways, most offer a bilingual service telling you where the next stop will be. To make things even easier, all stations are, as I say, allocated a number in sequence. So if you can count and you can't read the script, you know that station number 10, if station number 10 is your destination, is where you need to get off. My final tip is to embrace the peculiarities and accept it's a slightly different system, and realise that you will queue and you will be boxed into certain places to catch a train. It simply has to be that way. For example, Shinjuku Station has 3.1 billion passenger movements a year. So a functioning ticket and train schedule helps you on your way. Every train is busy, even first thing in the morning or late in the evening, so be prepared to stand. People are courteous, and there's none of the pushing or shoving you might expect in New York or London. Timetables are available for all services at the station, and I also found there was an online service, and that was immensely useful. Finally, if you're travelling to Haneda Airport from the centre of Tokyo, it is easier than the map suggests because there's a monorail, although this doesn't run until 7 a.m. The alternative is the Toei Asakusa line, and although this line is shared with a private company, the train service is little over 500 yen. It's very good value for money. Just be careful you don't get on the private train and you get on the public train, which is JR, and that way you will end up at Haneda. It's not too complicated. Getting around on the trains in Japan are not only superbly luxurious and simply the best way to get from A to B because the Shinkansens are so fast, but it is also relatively easy to buy tickets and get your reservations. There is just one final thing I have to say. The Enkomi train, which is the very fast, stops at very few stops, is not a train you can use the JR pass on. But there's plenty of other Shinkansens you can. Getting around Japan by train is just the best way to see a fascinating and wonderful country.